Okay, so actually I would like to order our request. So let's remove this to do. And we have something called a sort descriptor. So I'm going to set this equal to NSSort descriptor. And let's choose key path ascending. So the ascending is going to be false because I want it to be in descending order from the largest to the smallest high score. And for the key path, I'm going to use high score entity. And we want to ascend, well, let's think, according to name or according to the score? Well, according to the score. And finally, we need to relate the sort descriptor and the request. So next, let's do request dot sort descriptors equals to sort descriptor. And that's it. This is an array of all of our sort descriptors. So we're done with fetch high scores. Now the next thing I want us to do is to save a high score. And this pattern of do catch will actually repeat itself quite often. But I don't want to just copy and paste the code because it's kind of error prone. So I'm just going to create a function, save high score. Because sometimes we make changes, but they're not really saved. So again, naively, I could say, let's take our container, grab the view context, and save. The problem is this might fail. So what we'll do is we'll try this. And this attempt must be within a do catch because we might get an error. And if we do have an error, then we should print some message, right? For instance, something similar to what we had up here. Right, so I'm just going to copy this because I'm a little bit lazy. So error saving high scores. And that's it. So we're good with saving. Now, the thing is, once we connect it to the view, when we save, it will not update the high scores in our view, right? We have this high scores variable, which we're publishing over here. And the view, which we haven't created yet, is listening to the high scores. Now we want any changes to affect the view. So in order for this to happen, we'll just do, after saving, fetch high scores. And that will trigger a change in the high scores published variable, which will trigger a change in the view. Okay, great. So things are coming along. Now, the next thing I'd like to do is to actually be able to add a new high score. So func add. Now things will get quite easy. So add a new high score. Now I'm going to assume we have a name and a score, which will be of type int64. Now let's create a new entity. So let entity be equal to high score entity. And we're going to need a context. So the context will come from our container. So we have container dot view context. And now we can just set entity. The entity name will be the name given to the function. And the entity score will be the score given to the function. But this won't update the high scores until we do save high score. It's that simple. Now, so let's suppose I want to update a high score. Update in what sense? Well, we don't want the user to be able to change their own high score, but maybe they mistyped their name, okay? So I'm going to write it as update high score, but it's not really updating the high score, it's updating the username. So I can erase the score because we're not going to allow the user to change his or her own score. And now let's just remove the score part. So entity.name equals to name, and I want to accept an entity, right? So suppose we have some entity that we want to update its high score, right? So given an entity, a high score entity, I want to just change the name of this entity and then save the changes. Okay, great. Now I also want an option to delete an entity. So I'm going to copy this, update high score, and let's do delete high score. And the only input will be this entity over here. So now let's take container, view context. Now we have save functionality. It would be nice if we had delete, and we do have delete. So delete entity. Okay, so we're pretty good so far. Later we'll have a list, so we'll have to delete from a list, and we'll need a little bit more functionality later. But most of the functionality that we need already appears here. Okay, great. So yeah, so have an amazing day and see you next time.